here with us today. And so we're going to do a little bit of discussion about the visual side of AI and image generators and how you might enhance your classes by utilizing some of these tech tools. As was mentioned, I am a facilitator and instructional designer with Strategic Ed. I've been working there for 3 years, solely with UNCF and projects working with HBCU faculty. So I'm just thrilled again to be able to present in this format. Let me get my action going. So here are some images. All of these were created through an image generator. So I was thinking about different subject areas and different types of things that we teach at the university level and what we might want to generate images in. So some of these are kind of generic, and others are a little bit more specific. So some of the prompts I used was a weather map. You can see down here in the corner. I asked for a realistic image of a human heart. I asked for a Black college professor from the 1930s and got this image up in the corner, a World War II soldier. This is Pittsburgh. So I've asked for Pittsburgh and some of its landmarks. And this top one up here, I asked for a visual representation of time. And that's what I got. So a little metaphor. So a lot of the images in here were generated, almost 100% of the images in this presentation were generated through AI. So just keep that in mind as we go through. So the foundation that I'd like to discuss with you today is just talking about what is visual explanation and the concept of visual explanation as we go through, and the work of Edward Tufte, and how we can present data by using visuals and what benefits we get by using images as we're teaching. We'll also do just a quick overview of some AI generators, and we'll look at some and we'll play with them and we'll check out some of the prompts and things that we can do with them. I know a lot of you probably have already jumped into the Chat GPT world and done some of those kind of things, but I don't hear as many people going into the AI image generators. So I would love to get you in and have you look at them, and we'll share some links with you too. I have sort of two categories: free and not free. But even the not free sometimes has a little bit of free. So it'll give you what they call credits, and they'll let you have so many credits that you can use for free, and then you have to pay. And they're not incredibly expensive, $10 a month. And so, and then we'll also talk about how we can use these generators to be inclusive as we talk about culturally responsive pedagogy and what it looks like in your classroom. If you don't find images that relate to what you're doing, you can create your own, and you don't have to worry about going out there and searching. So it's a huge time saver to allow you to connect to your students. So Edward Tufte, several years ago, I went to see Edward Tufte speak. Edward Tufte was a Yale professor who wrote several books on visual explanation. And I'm just in the chat. How many people have ever heard of Tufte, if anybody, in our group today? You ever heard of Edward Tufte? I'm going to look in there and see. So Tufte was actually a statistician that liked to use images to demonstrate data through those, demonstrate his statistics through images. And he was also an expert in presentation graphics. And when you go to his workshop, which is a full day workshop, he gives you these 4 incredibly beautiful books, which you can see here on the side. You can also purchase these separately if you're interested. I'm not selling books for Tufte, but they are available, and they're really good, and they're absolutely stunningly beautiful. And even though this theory was created years ago, now in the age of AI, it really comes back to the fourfold on Tufte's theories on how you teach with AI. So let me go through. Oh, good, we have some people that have heard of Tufte. I'm going to skip over this video really quickly, and we'll go back to it if we have time. because it's a little bit longer, but it's just tough talking about his theories. And oops, let me stop that. So in general, what explanation tells us is that we can form better connections in our brain by looking at a visual. It helps us create those neurons, that the plasticity in the brain come together so that we can recall better through an image. And I always give this example, and those of you who've been with me before know and are probably sick of this example. But one time when I was teaching, I was in teacher education. I was a faculty member for 16 years. I was teaching, and I don't know why, but I drew a picture of an umbrella on the board. And I was trying to display some concept, not rain, but something about learning theories. So I had the umbrella, and I had the rainfall, and I had the flowers. And later in the semester, I gave an exam, and half of my students drew a picture of the umbrella on the exam. And I started to think about, what was it about that visual, that mnemonic device, that helped them understand what they were doing? So as much as it breaks my heart, research has told us, sorry, of course, somebody's ringing my doorbell. Research says that we no longer have learning styles. Have you heard about this research now that says learning styles don't exist? Does anybody have any feels about that like me? Please unmute yourself if you're as heartbroken as I am. Is heartbroken over the fact that we don't have learning styles anymore. And so what they say is there's really just no correlation. Follow-up research has to target the way that students learn best. So they would take a student who said, I'm a visual learner, and they tried to teach them solely with visuals. And they tried to take an auditory learner and teach them solely with auditory materials, and so on. And what they found is there's no increase in retention by solely focusing on what the perceived learning style is. So when we think about this sort of visual explanation, keep that in the back of your mind as we go through. What we do know is that we remember things where we can create patterns. And so those patterns could be created through visual spatial, naturalistic, verbal linguistic. Also, if you know me, you know I'm a huge fan of the book Brain Rules, and John Medina, who is a neuroscientist who studies the brain. And Medina says, if you create those patterns in your brain, you create those connections, you're going to remember better. And he gives tips on how to do that. And some of his tips are things like, if you can evoke an emotional experience from a topic. So if you can help relate something and connect something. One of his examples was talking about DNA in a science class, and then relating that to prisoners who've been wrongly convicted and freed on DNA evidence, so that students then have an emotional connection to that. And so Medina also says, this idea of using images really helps students to process and make connections in addition to reading, in addition to lecture, in addition to completing activities and hands-on things like that. So it's all part of a package. So we know the human brain can process entire images in as little as 13 milliseconds. So think about that. Now, while we might be able to process them, keep in mind, have you heard the theories where somebody is asked to be a witness to say a crime, and they might describe the person as tall, they might say they have a certain skin tone, they might say they have a certain hair color, they might say, and you might have 10 different people and you might have 10 different descriptions. So while we process that image, we are also processing it from our point of experience, from our background. And then our memories make sense of it in different ways. So that's another thing to keep in mind as we talk about why we're going to generate images. We also know that when we follow directions with text and illustrations, we do 323% better. Now, that's a very specific number when you think about that. But let's think about, anybody here ever buy IKEA furniture and try to put it together? Right? Airplane safety cards. Right, Matthew? Thank you. Yeah, airplane safety cards. How many people now try to go onto YouTube to follow directions, those kind of things. So when you're giving assignments and you're giving written direction, is there any way that you could add illustrations to go along with it to aid in what your students are processing so they can complete it better? Have you ever had students say to you, could you give us an example? Like, and I've always was leery of that because I always thought, oh, I'm just going to get that example right back. But there's a reason why they want that example. They want to be able to visually process what it is while following your instructions. What do you think? Is this accurate to you in your experiences when it comes to following directions? Anybody want to share? Is it Laza?
Yes. Yeah, I think yes, it's Laza. I think like in one of the class that I teach, I have illustration in addition to text of like what to do, and you know, with arrows and different things like that of what to expect. And he helps the students just, you know, navigate a little more the instructions in the assignments and just get what they need to do done. So I have less questions about how to do an assignment from that point of view.
That's a great example, and how much time that must save you in having to answer questions because you've already provided them with a really nice framework. So thank you for sharing. One of the things when it came to this slide I was thinking about was, anybody remember MapQuest? When you used to print out the written directions, turn here, go there. I'm just terrible at directions. And for me, a GPS where I have a map and I can see, oh, don't turn on that road. Because, right, your GPS always says, you know, turn in 100 feet. Well, frankly, I don't process dimension very well. So 100 feet to me is probably not 100 feet to you, or actual 100 feet. So the images really help me as I'm trying to navigate. So think back in your history of, you know, where images might fit to help explain things better for you. Let me look in the chat. Oh, I love that, Amanda, that example of your little girl in math, right? Yes. And think about those abstract concepts that if we can visualize those. My big one is always meteorology because I'm just a geek when it comes to the weather. I've become that old woman that, you know, I check the weather. My family calls me and asks me what the weather's going to be for the day. I'm on the weather. We just had a really nasty thunderstorm. I was afraid it was going to go on. But you really couldn't see the weather, right? The meteorologist or the weather person might have a map and it was stagnant, but now we have radar and you can almost pinpoint to the minute where that weather is coming from. So you get that visualization of highs and lows and dew points and things like that because the images allow us to see that much better. So for somebody who has trouble with abstract concepts, trying to visualize it is a really good way to help them. So why would we use images in online learning? Well, here's just some examples as to why. To capture a feeling, to spark that curiosity, to get that emotion going, or to summarize a message. I used to do a presentation all the time, and in it, there was an image of a dog stuck in a hammock. And it was just an opportunity to talk about being stuck at a place where we're trying to move forward and we're stuck. And nobody would ever forget that picture of a dog in a hammock because it was such a curious, interesting, the dog was not harmed. in being stuck in the hammock, but it got people thinking. It also helps lighten the cognitive load, right? So do we have a lot of readers here? People who love to read books, whether it be fiction, nonfiction? That's a heavy cognitive load when you're trying to visualize where your book is. Is it set at the ocean? Is it set in the mountains? Which ones? So you relate it to what you know. But if there's images, which we do with children's books, right? Because it helps lessen that cognitive load and make those connections. Images need to be meaningful to the audience. And that's where AI is such a great tool to fill in, because you can make those relationships. You can show them people who look like them in the images that you're using in your class. You can use those images to teach. You can use them to make your students think and reflect. And you can also demonstrate inclusivity through those images, because you can create whatever you want. I will give an image of the movie Psycho. I love it. Cooking. Yeah. Great examples in the chat. Thank you for sharing. I will give a caveat or a caution though. Anymore, there are so many images that are graphic, horrific, realistic to the point of, nausea. So you want to be a little bit careful. I certainly was, that you're not showing something, or at least putting a warning on something that if it was disturbing, that you let the students know in advance and give them that opportunity to say yes or no, I'd like to view this. And there's different subjects that you might teach that where that could come into play, nursing and the health fields. You're trying to demonstrate a surgery, or you're cutting in, those kind of things, biology and so on. And so it could be a political science class where you're demonstrating political conflicts and war and those types of situations. So just something to keep in mind, and please keep that in the back of your head to going through. So, starting to learn that AI is all about the prompts and what kind of prompt that you put in for your image. And you can be very, very simple and basic, but you can also build and change and grow those prompts to get exactly what you want. And I'll show you that, because I'm going to show you some of these image generators. But first thing you want to do is describe the content of your image. What do you want that image to be? Do you want it to be a doctor? Do you want it to be an image of a cell? Do you want it to be an image of a historical figure? What is the subject of that image? What details do you want? Do you want it to be in a certain setting? Do you want it to be a certain color? What form and style do you want it to look like? Do you want it to be realistic? Do you want it to be artistic? Do you want it set in a certain time era? And then define the composition. So as you put these prompts in, you can work and rework and really get to what you want. Any questions about writing prompts and the benefits of using images in your class? I'm hearing none. I'm looking at what Matthew said in the chat. I gave my students an assignment to create an infographic. Yes, I love the infographics. Love. Fantastic. Okay. So here are some AI generators that have a fee. And so most of us have probably heard of Dolly. That is probably the most famous AI generator. And again, it's a fee with a little bit of free. So the little bit of free is 25 credits and you can use it. Midjourney is another one. Canva, I know that some of my former students in here, we've gone through Canva. Canva now has a text to image generator built right in. Dream Studio. And you can see some of these images I have here were pulled from these AI generators. So this one down here, I'm particularly fond of. This is where you can draw in a picture and it'll generate an image. So think about all the fun things you could do in your class with something like that. Do you teach literature? You could have students write a children's book and draw their own images and use an AI generator to create the images around that. You could have them write an instructional guide to biology or history and have AI generate the images for them. And so you're getting, several different skills when you're asking them to do that. And these are the AI tools that are free. And so Crayon is one of the most basic AI tools you'll find. Free Pick, Perchance, Deep AI. So you'll have the links to these. I started putting this presentation together several months ago. There are so many more AI generators out there now, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. So if there's something that you know of that's missing from this list, that's probably why. These images on this page were all generated by me. And so this one here of Big Bird, I did a little mashup with Big Bird and a Starry Night. Could be a fun writing prompt for an English class. It could be something for art class. You could do different things with it. If you know me, you know I'm a huge Steeler fan. This is Mike Tomlin, the coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, standing in front of the Grand Canyon. These are Black doctors consulting on a case. These are the prompts I used. And this is a 1800s map of, I think, Antarctica, I think. So I'll give you some cautions as we go through, but one caution is authenticity of image. So making sure you know and you triple check that that image is correct. Remember early on I showed you the heart. I'm not in the medical field. If that heart was accurate or not, I probably wouldn't be the person to tell you that. So I would probably try to find other pictures of the heart, or I would ask somebody, a doctor who would know better than me if it was an accurate representation, and maybe you have textbooks you could compare it to. So just keep that caution in mind. Okay, so let's go ahead and try it out. I'm going to stop sharing this screen for a minute and take a look at you all. So glad you're here. And let me share my AI tools. So look at this old boring screen, right? How plain and simple can you get? Did not need to create an account, didn't need to do anything, just went to AI image generator. I have an opportunity to put a prompt in here. So how about I do a parrot in the jungle. And I can do this, I can add descriptions. I can say anti-description, things I don't want. I can pick an art style. There are more than I could even imagine. I could do anime, I could do a photo. I could make my parrot look like a Disney character. I could make it an oil painting. Let's do an oil painting. I could do it in the shape of a portrait. I can pick how many I want. I'll say 3, and I'm going to go ahead and click generate. And it's starting to work now. I don't know why I picked that prompt. I was just thinking about a parrot. And there is our lovely parrot. And you can just do a right click and download, and you will have that picture. But I changed my mind. I want my parrot to be purple. Purple parrot. And I don't want it to be in the jungle. I want it to be in the city. And I'm going to generate. Let's see what happens. Okay, I'm there. I like it. I did this earlier today. They were completely different. So that's the thing about AI. It learns, it grows, it changes, it will continue to build. You can keep going back to that prompt until it looks exactly the way that you want. So you can go and say, okay, I don't want it to be purple. I don't want it to be in the city. I want it to be by the ocean, or things like that. So that is one of our AI tools. Let me pull up another one and see if my screen changes. Okay. So this one is OpenArt, another AI generator tool, a little bit different in the way that it's laid out and what it looks like. Over here on the left side, I can put in my prompt. So I can say, maybe I want to do something, I'm teaching marketing and I want to create a marketing ad. So I could say, college students. Let me see if it'll let me type. Maybe I want to send something out to the alumni for fundraising. Playing, let's say playing football. Okay. And I can do a negative prompt again, which is what I don't want. And then I can come down here and I can pick what kind of image I want. And I can make all those changes. And you can see this one, I have 50 trial credits. So this is one that I'd have to pay for. And I'm gonna press create. See what I get. Some of them move very quickly. Some of them take a little longer to generate the image. I'm doing really simple one sentence prompts. You could do a prompt that had 3 or 4 parts or components to it, and then it will take a little bit longer to generate the image. So let's see, it's still working. Has anybody used any of these tools while we're waiting? Please, will you share with us what you've used and how you've used it? You can just unmute yourself. You don't need to raise your hand or anything. Yes, Paul, thank you for sharing the Google Gemini. I just learned about that one too. So Google has its own image generator too. So this is still working. I'm gonna let it keep working and maybe go back to it later. But once those images come up, you can see I can add them to an album, I can download them, or I can just delete them and go on to the next thing. So super simple. So I'm gonna go ahead and just go to the next one. This one is Dolly Mini, and it's part of
Bonnie, if I
another
could just interrupt you for a
Yes.
second. There was just a question in the chat about copyright and credit for the image. So how does that, I guess, work? That was a good question. Thank you, Lavanya.
Thank you for interrupting me for that. That is a really good question. So there is a way to credit AI generated content. And you can just do a quick search and it'll tell you, what the formatting should be for that. But these are original images pulled from existing data on the internet. So there'll be no other image that looks exactly like that image, but it is taking data. So that's where we have to be careful because, some of the other images on the internet might not be accurate, appropriate, could have bias built into them. And so I would definitely have students cite that they created the image through AI and even include the prompt that they used if it was me and I was teaching. I think that's a great question. But they are considered image. So, the student who creates the image, it's considered their image, their property. Great question. This is another super simple, easy AI generator. It's part of Crayon, and I gave you the link for Crayon as well. The only thing with the Crayon image generator is every image it creates, it puts a little Crayon logo on it. So if you don't want the logo, you could come to this Dolly Mini. And again, does anybody have a prompt they want me to try? Look in the chat and see. I really like that question. Come on, give me a prompt idea. Somebody. What do you teach? right, I'm going to history then. Let's do a World War One plane. How about that?
We also have somebody, Bonnie, who put in the chat, alligator near a boat,
Okay, I'll do that next.
or a religious setting with a congregation.
Okay, those are good. I like that. Yeah, think about what you teach. Think about where an image might enhance that. If you're teaching online, images really add to the experience. You know, when we teach about online learning, we teach about the rule of thirds on a page, on a web page, where you've got an image and you break it up with some text, and you might have a table, or you might have a video and you want to break it up. The image should relate. It doesn't necessarily have to be a teaching image, but it certainly should relate to what you're doing. Okay, so here's some planes. Are these World War I planes? I don't know. Anybody teach about World War I? You could tell me yes or no. And in this case, we got 9 images. So alligator near a boat, huh? And the thing is, in the prompt, I can also say photograph. So we'll see if the alligator in the boat looks like a photograph instead of cartoon, animation, something like that. Are we doing good on time? And this one takes a little while to go. We've got some things running in the background. While we're waiting for this to generate, let's see if I can go back to, all right, no, still don't have my college students playing football. That must have been a little tough for it. We'll come over here. So I see also in the chat, let's see, Jessica. I'm not surprised, Jessica. You're always such a forward thinker, using Midjourney and Leonardo, Dolly, Pixar. Fantastic. So what do you think? Alligator near a boat. There's an alligator in a boat. There's an alligator near a boat. There's an alligator half on a boat. These are all original photos that it pulled from somewhere. These are original images. I'll do one more and then we'll go back, because I've got just a few more closing ideas for you. So let's see, what was the other one? A religious congregation?
Yep, a religious setting with a congregation.
Okay.
And I'm also going to go ahead and put the links that you had submitted in the chat, Bonnie, or that you had submitted. So if anyone wants to access any of these AI generators, you can just go right to the chat and grab the link.
Thank you. Okay. And I'm gonna jump back and see. No, oh, there we go. Students playing football. That was a lot of waiting for, it was a little anticlimactic, wasn't it? But yeah, we've got some images now. Again, these are original. So if you were doing some marketing, some outreach, trying to reach your alumni, and you wanted some different images in here, I could go back and change this prompt to, I could say diverse college students. I could say Black college students, Asian college students, Hispanic college students. I could put any type of qualifier I'd like in there. And here's our religious congregation. So it's fun, right? I could get lost in this for a long, long time, just kind of playing with images and sort of building up the different types of things we can do with it. So thank you for playing along. Let me get back to our presentation. I see I've got about 5 minutes left, so let me share really quickly. Okay, so some classroom ideas that you might be able to use this with. You could illustrate a concept or a physics problem. You could use it as a writing prompt. So give them a particularly unique image that they could write about. It could be a mnemonic to help them remember a concept. You could have them create presentations with custom graphics, personalize different activities where you're creating images that feel very personal to your students. Maybe you have a club that does esports. You could do something, where you have esport images. You could practice language learning by having a student describe the image that's in front of them. You could do product designs if you're in a business class and maybe have them create something, architectural illustrations. I've tried where I've said, put in a ranch house and it's this wide, and you can even put in the dimensions so that it would look to the dimensions that you set it at. And you can do some fun things like that. Some of the benefits, it really does save a lot of time. Look how quickly we generated a multitude of images, and it allowed us to pick between more than one. We could pick between 3 or 2 or 9 or how many ever we determine. It's really easy to adapt and change and edit, and you can just continue to tweak and tweak and tweak till you get what you want. It can aid in learning by illustrating patterns. You could have students do this where you could say, go generate an image for me of this concept in your perspective. It might help you better understand your students too. So if they're creating an image that's kind of a little off base, you might bring them back and say, it's not exactly to scale or correct, and here's the reasons why. You could do an image that was incorrect and have them identify everything that was wrong with it. Those kind of things. It help promote creativity. You could do the culturally responsive pedagogy because you can customize these images. So, if you've got learning materials that are not culturally responsive, create your own, and you can use this image generator to do that. Some of the concerns, again, accuracy. You want to make sure that any image you're putting in front of a student and you're declaring it to be accurate, that it actually is. So if it's something that's supposed to be a one-to-one graphical representation of a model, you want to be sure that it does have all the qualities that you're looking for. The generators learn from other artists' work. So if the artist isn't using some kind of AI blocking tool from their artistry, it is being used without their permission. So if it's posted on the internet, you might have seen my picture of Mike Tomlin. I did not ask Mike Tomlin for his permission to stand in front of the Grand Canyon. It was pretty accurate look of Mike Tomlin. So imagine the ramifications of, hey, I saw this person here, and here's a picture of them at this time, and that person was never there. So you just keep those things in mind. It can reinforce bias. These AI generators are not intelligent to the point where they know if they're pulling from something that's accurate or not. So we want to make sure that we check that. The copyright, as we had the question on, it's still a little murky. So keep up to date with your copyright skills and understanding the copyright ramifications behind this. And also sometimes it creates NSFW images. So it creates images that are not appropriate. And so we want to be sure, of course, that we're being careful and cautious, especially if we're sending students out to use these generators. We don't want them coming back with something that's completely inappropriate. So putting it all together, AI image generators are easy to use, they're accessible, and really anybody with an internet connection. You can see I have a pretty fast internet connection. It still took a little while for some of them. So keep that in mind. They can aid in learning and interpretation. Be sure to do your due diligence with policy, procedures, and concerns. Make sure that you know what your university stance is. And if they don't have a stance, you may want to just check with your direct supervisor to say, this is what I'm doing in my classroom, just to cover yourself. As we are learning that a lot of universities now are creating these policies. And, just take some time to explore what the possibilities are. You are all brilliant, creative minds. I'm sure there's different ways that you would find to use this in your particular classes. Thank you so much for being here today. We have just about a minute. I'm happy to stay on a little bit later if anybody has any questions or wants to chat. just thrilled to see you all. So thank
I
you,
know
thank
that
you.
I see that Laza has their hand up. Did you have a question, Laza, or a remark or something?
No, that was my head from earlier. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's from earlier. Okay, no problem. Just want to make sure.
Well, hearing none, I will just again say thank you and allow us to have some TLC Talks closing information for you.
Thank you so much, Bonnie. That was great. So thank you for joining us for today's session. I think that we're definitely going to be doing more and more sessions regarding technology and AI as things become more and more, things are rolled out every day, and tech is changing every day. So I'm sure we're going to be doing some sessions to kind of keep up with that. Please utilize the link on the screen that you see now to complete the evaluation. Like I said before, it's very helpful for us when we're planning future sessions to know what we're doing right, what we could work on, and what topics you would like to see. If you want to contact the TLC Center at UNCF, you can use tlcenter@uncf.org. You can also contact Geneva Dampere, the Director of Strategy and Operations. Her email is listed, as well as my email, in case you need to get in touch with me directly. And also, if you don't already, please follow us on LinkedIn. You can definitely follow different things, events that we are putting on. Also, you'll get updates on future sessions that are occurring, as well as we will post the recordings. So you will be able to access them there as well. So yeah, there's not any other questions.
We have a question. Can we put the link in the chat?
Oh yes, thank you for yes, absolutely.